Hey everyone, Joe Bowen, the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs here, inviting you to join a very special podcast, 30 minutes live with CDP. It's every Wednesday and Friday night on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. How you guys doing? Thanks for tuning in to a Friday afternoon edition of 30 Minutes Live with CDP. And I'm just waiting for my guest, Derek Wills, the radio voice of the Calgary Flames on Sportsnet 960 in Calgary, to come on. He also was the voice of the Hamilton Bulldogs, the AHL version, for 13 years as well. And I'm looking forward to speaking to Derek today. I'm just going to put his picture up here. 1 second, guys. I hope you're all doing well on this Friday, July 2nd. And anybody I missed yesterday, I wish anybody a happy Canada's Day. And for my American friends who listen to this as well, I'd like to wish you happy 4th of July this Sunday. So, yes, I did send Derek the link to my podcast, and hopefully he should be on shortly to talk about his career with first with the Hamilton Bulldogs for 13 long years, and then taken over for the the legendary Peter Mahar, who did the Calgary Flame games, I believe, for over 33 years. And I will ask him how that was to follow the footsteps of a legend like Peter Mahar. Anyways, guys, like I said, just bear with us, and hopefully we'll have Derek on very soon. Like I said, I sent him the link and stuff like that. So anyways, guys, while we're waiting for Derek to come on, we got 2021 Stanley Cup Finals resuming tonight. Game number 3 at 8 o'clock. Tampa Bay at Montreal. Lightning, as you guys know, lead the series 2-0, and only 3,500 fans will be allowed in the Bell Center tonight, as per the Quebec government. But maybe playing at home will help the Canadians out. But to me, this is a key game for Montreal. You don't want to fall behind 3-0 to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is too good to spot them a 3-0 lead. So they're going to have to play their best game of the series tonight. I thought Montreal played better in Game 2 against Tampa Bay, but that goal at the end of the second period was what? 0.3 of a second with a backbreaker, and then third goal in the third period was about 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left. The defenseman behind Montreal's net just got lazy with the puck, and Tampa Bay forward took that puck and put it in the net. So I thought Price played well. I thought the team played well, but a couple of mistakes against Tampa Bay, and they'll make you pay. Even though Montreal severely outshot them, Tampa Bay's the defending champs. They're experienced. You can't make mistakes. So Montreal tonight will have to not have any mistakes at all to have a chance to get back into the series. If they can do that, they'll have a good chance of winning Game 3. But if they continue to make mistakes with the puck and give up late second goals, then the series could be over with in 4 games or 5, but let's just hope Montreal can show up tonight. And some other news, Montreal will be able to host outdoor viewing parties outside the Bell Center after the request for more fans in the arena was denied this week by the Quebec government. So they're going to need all the support they can get. So anyways, just 1 second. I just heard from Derek, so I'm just going to yep. 1 sec, guys. 1 second, guys. It works. I'm just texting Derek right now. Hey, sometimes technical difficulties happen. So we'll just see. Yep. Yeah. Basically, Derek's just trying to get on with the link. He uses a MacBook, so I just told him Google Chrome, so just bear with us, guys. So yeah, that was probably on my fault too. One thing about StreamYard, it does work better on PCs and laptops and phones. It does work on phones, but it also works on Google Chrome. The best system to use with StreamYard is Google Chrome. So hopefully Derek will be with us shortly. I really appreciate Derek giving us some time today to come on and talk about his career with the AHL's Bulldogs and now with the Calgary Flames. And we'll see what he thinks about the Flames. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just, like I said, I'm just texting him right now. So, yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, guys, if anybody has any questions or whatever for Derek, please send them in the comment section as well. Um, Yeah. So, anyways, guys, like I said, so yeah, it's just because Derek was using his Apple MacBook, but like I said, StreamYard does tend to work better with Google Chrome system. So, I just told Derek no worries, and hopefully we'll cross the fingers. Derek will be on in a couple of minutes. So, anyways, guys, like I said, if anybody's watching right now, I just want to say thank you for watching on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and Twitter Live. And while we're waiting for Derek, I will promotes my audio version of myself as well. Just bear with me, guys. 30 Minutes Live with CDP, the audio version, which is downloaded after these podcasts, is on Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, and Castbox. So if you guys prefer the audio version instead of the live version, that's fine too. So, anyways, guys, and like I said, StreamYard's the official live stream provider of 30 Minutes Live with CDP. And guys, you can also check out my Facebook sports page, the Chris Palme Sports Blog, as well, which I do post stuff and blog every day on as well. And if you guys want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris D. Palme. And anyways, guys, like I said, today's guest is Derek Wills, the radio voice of the Calgary Flames on Sportsnet 960 in Calgary since 2013, taking over for the legendary, following the footsteps of the legendary Peter Marha. And you can also follow Derek on Twitter at fan960wills, and he's also on Facebook, and I believe he's on Instagram as well if you want to check him out. Like I said, some other notes. Oh, there he is. Just give me 1 second. And Derek is just popped on right now. So Derek was also the senior director of broadcasting communications and team services, play-by-play announcer for the AHL Bulldogs for 13 years as well. Guys, just give me 1 second, and I will bring Derek Wills on here. 1 second. Hey, good afternoon, Derek. How you doing?
Doing well, Chris. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for giving me some time to come on here today. And I apologize. I should have mentioned to you in my email that it does work better on Google Chrome than the other systems.
Yeah, I got the Heisman trying to run it on Safari on my MacBook. So all Google Chromed up now and ready to go.
Okay. No, great. And this technology is just amazing with StreamYard and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I guess one of the spin-offs of having to deal with a global pandemic for the last year plus.
Yeah, I've been doing this podcast just for over a year now. And before I was doing the podcast, I was doing camera work for Rogers TV for the Guelph Storm games, which I really liked. And I got basically a taste of the broadcasting bug from the Guelph Nighthawks of the CBL Rogers TV. And I just decided over a year ago I wanted to do a podcast. And now my goal is hopefully one day to get an opportunity in radio.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of how I started in broadcasting as well. Going back to high school, I went to Lakeshore Catholic High School in Port Colborne, Ontario, and we had to do a co-op placement in grade 13. It's funny because there's no grade 13 out here in Alberta, so everybody wonders what I'm talking about when I talk about my OAC year. But I did my placement at Rogers Community 10 in Welland and did a lot of behind-the-scenes work. And one of the big things I worked on was junior B hockey. And Niagara is the largest market in Canada without a major broadcaster. So it was quite a production. We did 50 plus games back then and covered the Sutherland Cup. And that's how I kind of got my feet wet behind the scenes. And one night when the host didn't show up and I raised my hand and volunteered to fill in, that's when my in front of the camera career started. So it seems like a long time ago, but also kind of feels just like yesterday in a way.
Well, and you have to start somewhere, and I'm starting a little bit later in life, but you know what? Everybody in your industry has been really great with me, and coming on my podcast and giving me advice, and just trying to improve myself every podcast I do.
Yeah, I think that's certainly one of the ways you can get better. And one of the things I used to do back in the day, I started, I think it was 1996 or 97 when I first started doing some on-air work on community TV. Is I'd record every single broadcast and I'd watch it 2 or 3 times. Back then, it was on a VHS tape, not even a DVD or a PVR. So I would watch myself and try to figure out, is there something I'm doing well? Is there something? And trust me, there's a lot of things I wasn't doing well back then, and just try to improve myself. But absolutely, I certainly encourage you to get as much advice and feedback from those in the industry as you can. It's valuable if you can get it, and it's certainly one of the ways you can get better.
Yeah, I had Ken Daniel. I'm a Red Wings fan, and I had Ken Daniels on a couple weeks ago, and he gave me some great advice as well. So, and that's exactly what I do, Derek. After each podcast, I download them audio and put them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. And then I either watch it live again or I listen to the audio to see what I did okay, what I could have done better, and what I can improve on for the next show. So everyone's given me that advice as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because last year was my 25th year in broadcasting and 20th year calling professional hockey games, and I still do it. I still listen to probably every second or third game and try to listen to it from start to finish. And even in year number 7, going on 8 in the NHL, it's still something I do to try to improve myself. And I guess the analogy I would use is Connor McDavid might be the best hockey player in the world, or certainly one of them, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't go to practice every day to try to improve himself. So really doesn't matter what level you get to, you can always get better. And I'm glad to hear that's what you're doing, and that's still what I'm doing as well.
Yeah, and Jerry Howarth was giving me the same advice too. So I've been really lucky to have guys like yourself, Ken Daniels, even Dan Shawman, sorry, from the Blue Jays and ESPN come on as well. So I still have a long ways to go, but I really appreciate you coming on today. And I wanted to say congratulations on 25 years. It goes by quick, doesn't it?
It sure does. Like I said, starting in junior B 25 years ago, 26 years ago, whatever it was. I still have so many great memories of those days, and I learned so much working with all of the owners and managers and coaches and players, and I'm still friends with quite a few of them today, and we'll catch up with them whenever I'm back at home in Niagara. But yeah, it feels like a long time ago in a sense, but again, it feels like just yesterday in a lot of ways because of all those great memories I have of doing junior B hockey or junior A lacrosse, and all the great relationships that I built. And I wouldn't be here in Cochrane, Alberta, getting ready to call my 8th season with the Flames if it wasn't for all of those people and them giving me an opportunity back then, and certainly giving me some advice. I remember one piece of advice that I got that I thankfully didn't take was I didn't have this voice when I was 18 years old and just trying to get into broadcasting on the air. And people would say, you got to start smoking cigarettes. And I decided not to take that advice. So health wise, I'm glad I didn't take that advice. And I figured out a way to get a little bit deeper voice in other ways.
Yeah, Jerry Howarth was mentioning that too when I had him on. Before he took over the Blue Jays job, he actually ended up going to get voice lessons to improve his voice overall. And he even recommended it to me as well at some point as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the great thing about broadcasting nowadays is that having a different voice can actually be considered a good thing. Maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you had to have a quote unquote radio voice to be on the radio or to be on television. But these days, I think there are a lot of great broadcasters, and Jerry Howarth would be one of them, who have more unique voices. Even listening to the Stanley Cup Final right now, Chris Cuthbert doesn't have the deepest voice out there, but he has a unique voice and is an unbelievable play caller and does a great job just being able to capture the excitement of the game and help us experience that through the television. So I think the great thing about broadcasting now is that unique voices in a lot of ways are being celebrated, where in the past, I'm not sure you could really put yourself in a position to get a job in one of the 4 major leagues or on a station in a large market unless you had that quote unquote radio voice. So for a guy who didn't always have the radio voice, I think I've got a little bit more of a radio voice now after 25 years. I wouldn't be in the industry if people didn't, I guess, allow me to kind of find my feet under me and get a little better or get a lot better over the years. So I'm thankful for that.
Okay. Before I start asking you some questions, I just wanted to give a shout out to my friend Steve. He's from Hamilton. He wanted to tell you how much he enjoyed your work over the years with the Bulldogs. He was a season ticket holder. He always sat at 121 center ice, and even when the Bulldogs were on the road, he would listen to your games and stuff like that. So he just wanted me to say hi to you and say thank you for your time in Hamilton. And he thinks he's one of the better radio guys in the business.
Well, thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. I miss Bulldogs fans a lot. I was back in Hamilton a couple of times, actually during the pandemic, and it was great to just step back into what used to be Cops Coliseum and is now, I think, First Ontario Centre, and just walking back into that building where I spent 13 years brought back so many amazing memories. And I was really lucky. My professional career got started in 2001 when the Bulldogs took a chance on me, and I'd spent the previous 5 years doing, like I said, junior B hockey and junior A lacrosse, and applied for an opening in Hamilton that I thought I had no chance to get. And the Bulldogs hired me when I was 24. I was the youngest guy in the American Hockey League at the time, and spent 13 years there, and so many great memories and so many great relationships, long-lasting, lifelong relationships that I'm grateful to have because I was with the Hamilton Bulldogs for those 13 years. And even thinking about the Stanley Cup final right now, for 10 plus years, they were the affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens. So I still have great relationships with so many people that I worked with when the Habs and the Dogs were affiliated. And at the top of that list would be a man who's probably as responsible for me being where I am today as just about anybody outside of my dad. And that's Michael Landlauer, who is one of the shareholders of the Canadiens and still owns the OHL's Bulldogs. But Michael Landlauer was just so great to me over the years. And one of my great memories is when I did my 1,000th straight Hamilton Bulldogs game. He presented me with a solid silver stick at center ice at Cops Coliseum. And I'm not sure there's ever been another broadcaster in any league that's been given a silver stick like the players get. So I'm rooting for Michael Landlauer and the Montreal Canadiens, hoping that he adds a Stanley Cup ring to his Calder Cup ring, make that collection a little bit better.
I was going to ask you quickly. I was going to show a video clip or audio clip of some of your goal calls when you were with Hamilton in just a minute, if that's okay. I was going to ask you what your thoughts were on this series right now, and do you think Montreal can turn it around, being down 2-0, being at home the next two games?
Well, what do they say about a series? You're still in the series until you lose on home ice. So the good news for the Canadiens is they're heading back to Montreal. You've got games 3 and 4. They have to win game 3. If they don't win game 3, then the series is all but over. But they're a team that has surprised everybody to this point in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, truth be told, I didn't think they had a chance in the first round, let alone the second round or the third round or the fourth round. I mean, when I think about last season, the Canadiens played against the team that I work with, the Flames, in the Scotia North Division, and I'm convinced that if Calgary had another week or two, they would have passed Montreal and finished in that final playoff spot. The Canadiens just played so poorly, and they were so injury bitten. The injury bug got them late in the season, and they were without a number of their top players. They were without Carey Price and Shea Weber, and I think Ben Sherratt, and former Hamilton Bulldog, along with Carey Price, Brendan Gallagher. So they got all those guys back to start the playoffs. So I think that was a real shot in the arm for them. But still, I didn't think that they were going to win that first round series. And then when they did, I didn't think they were going to win their second round series. And then when they did, I certainly didn't think they were going to beat the Vegas Golden Knights in the semifinals. So I give the Montreal Canadiens a lot of credit. They actually remind me a lot of the 2007 Hamilton Bulldogs. Now, I would say this year's Canadiens, they were a bigger underdog going into the Stanley Cup playoffs than the 2007 Bulldogs were going into the Calder Cup playoffs, because the Habs were the 16th seed out of 16 playoff teams. They were dead last as far as seeding was concerned when the playoffs started. So the fact they're in the final is a miracle in a lot of ways. I don't think that they would tell you that, because they're a team that has talent. They're not the most talented team. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are, but the Montreal Canadiens have talent when healthy. And the reason they remind me of that Hamilton Bulldogs team is because, well, A, they've got the same goaltender, Carey Price, but B, they just started to build belief. And that Bulldogs team, they finished, I think, third in the division that year, and they were an underdog in all 4 rounds. And no one gave them a chance, certainly, to get to the Calder Cup final that year. And those that didn't give them a chance to beat the defending champion Hershey Bears, but they just built all of this belief with each and every win. And even in losses where they were in games and they had a chance late, they built that belief. And I think the Canadians have done the same thing this year. And I think it probably starts with the guy between the pipes. And going back to 2007, I think in a lot of ways, that's where the Bulldogs' belief started. And it's interesting because if you remember, Chris, in that 2006-2007 AHL season, Carey Price was playing junior hockey. He was busy winning a gold medal for Team Canada at the World Junior Championships that year. And he actually joined the Bulldogs at the end of his junior season. But the Bulldogs goaltender for most of that season was Jaroslav Halak. And he was the best goaltender in the AHL that season. So funny story, a lot of people, myself included, were really angry when Bob Gainey decided to send Jaroslav Halak to the World Championships that year and send a 19-year-old, untested, unproven Carey Price to the Hamilton Bulldogs for the Calder Cup playoffs. But in hindsight, it was a pretty good decision by Bob Gainey because he ended up starting every single game and won Calder Cup playoff MVP. So it all worked out in the end. But I will admit that when we found out Halak was going to the Worlds and Price was coming to us, we weren't very happy about it. But happy it happened, obviously. Yeah.
It worked out, and I was going to say, just to show you again, the regular season is important, but the playoffs are totally different.
100%. You just got to get in. And
yeah.
I mean, obviously, when I look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, they just have a more talented team than the Montreal Canadiens. The Habs do have some experienced players, but the Bolts, they've been there and done that. This is basically the team that won a Stanley Cup a season ago. So they have not only the talent, but they have the experience. So I thought it was going to be a tough series for the Canadians as well as they played in the first few rounds. I just think the Lightning are that much better than them and that much better than everybody. I picked them to win the Stanley Cup before the regular season started. I picked them again to win the Stanley Cup before the playoffs started. So I'm not at all surprised to see the Lightning playing for another championship. But the fact that the Canadians got to the final and they're down 2 games, but again, not out of it until you lose that first game at home. So cheering for them in Game 3 tonight.
So am I. It's because a couple of former Guelph Storm players are on that team. Ben Sherratt, the defenseman, and Nick Suzuki only played 1 year with Guelph for the OHL championship 2 years ago. But Suzuki, who came over from the Owen Sound Attack, made the difference in that Storm team that won the OHL championship. They were down 2-0 to every series or 3-0 to London, and they were the comeback kids. And this kid's Nick's not a kid anymore. He's 21 years old, but he's a very special hockey player. And I think Montreal did very well with that trade with former Hamilton Bulldog Matt Pacioretty to Vegas. It worked out well for Montreal with Suzuki.
Yeah, I think that trade actually worked out really well for both teams, Chris, because Max Pacioretty has been a great fit with the Golden Knights, and Nick Suzuki, obviously the Canadians had to be a little bit more patient with him because he is still a kid by NHL standards. But I think one of the exciting things, if you're a Habs fan, is that a lot of these young players, you've just seen them blossom in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. That's such a great sign for the Canadians moving forward. I think about Nick Suzuki and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, obviously Cole Caulfield. These are all going to be cornerstones of the Habs moving forward for the next, if you're a fan of the team, hopefully decade. So the fact that they have gone through 4 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs and they've gained that experience and they've really had a coming out party as players, it's pretty exciting for that team and for its fans.
Definitely. Okay. Just before I start asking you some questions, I just wanted to show a audio clip of some of your Bulldogs goal calls. Is that okay? Just for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully none of them are too bad.
No problem. No worries. 1 second. I'm just going to put that on right here.
Ball back to the far point. Now Stoll lines up, rebound, Hasty shoots, Hasty! Here come the Bulldogs on the attack. Ryder in front, fire, score! Michael Ryder with 1:17 to go in the second brings the fans to their feet. 5.1 seconds to go in the third period. Bulldogs leading 5-3. The face-off to the left outside Conklin. Chad Hins will step in to take the draw against Nielsen. Wins it. Ingy will pick it up and clear it down the ice. And for the first time in the 7-year history of the Hamilton Bulldogs, they are AHL regular season champions. What a year it has been here in Steeltown. Here comes Van Wagenatall weaving through the neutral zone. Drops. Sommerlainen scores! Tony Sommerlainen, a laser beam! Just inside the near post. Here's Milroy. Moves it nicely down the middle. Chipchura breaks through. Chipchura shoots. Scores! Kyle Chipchura scores the first goal of his professional career. Puck hopped out in front, but Silyev couldn't find it. Now we've got a one-on-one. Here's Rita down the right wing. Cutting and shoots. Scores! Oh, baby, what a goal by Yanni Rita. Now Hins with it.
Anyways, Derek, I just that
was a
sorry.
long time ago. Some of those calls were cringeworthy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's just I found them on YouTube, and what I do with all my guests is try to show some video or audio of my guests, just so people can see some of their work on here and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think those were all from my first year or my second year, early in my time in Hamilton for sure. But the Bulldogs had a lot of good teams during my 13 years there, and my first couple of years they were actually affiliated with the team that I cheered for growing up. And that was the Edmonton Oilers, which is strange now because I'm now the voice of their rival. But yeah, some really good teams in those early days. And Claude Julien was the head coach. Jeff Ward, who was the head coach here in Calgary for a season and a bit, was the assistant coach. And my roommate on the road my first year in the AHL. And yeah, that team back in 2001, 2002, I think lost in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final to the Bridgeport Sound Tigers. And then the team in 2002, 2003 was actually a split affiliate between Edmonton and Montreal. And the Canadians and the Oilers sent a lot of terrific prospects to that team. I think it might have been the most talented team in AHL history. I think you heard in one of my calls there, they were regular season champions, heavy favorites going into the Calder Cup playoffs, and got to the final, play against Todd McClellan's Houston Aeros, and heavy favorites going into that series. And lost in Game 7. I'll never forget that seventh game. Copps Coliseum was more than sold out. 17,428 people there. And the loudest the crowd got was after O Canada, unfortunately, because the Bulldogs lost 3-0 in that game. And as disappointing as that was, and maybe you can look it up, it made 2007 that much more special. And with all the calls I've had in my career, and I wouldn't put any of the ones we just heard near the top of the list. They'd probably be closer to the bottom, although I've got some tapes of my old Junior B games, and I won't even listen to them. Maybe one day when I'm brave enough, I will. But my call of A.J. Bain's game and series and Calder Cup winning goal, and then the final 10 seconds are two calls I'm extremely proud of from 2007. So if you're looking to find some of my better work during my days with the Bulldogs, I encourage you to look up those calls.
Okay, no problem. Derek, I'm just going to ask, you still okay for time? I was just going to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Thanks. The first question I was going to ask you, can you just tell my audience a little bit about yourself, and when did you know exactly you wanted to pursue a career in broadcasting or being a radio play-by-play guy?
Well, for me, I've always had a love of hockey. My dad started the beginners program in my hometown of Port Colborne, Ontario. He was the first coach of the Junior B team. And I was going to the rink and I was pushing a chair around the ice when I was 2 years old. I was always a small kid. I didn't start to grow until probably grade 11 or 12. And then I was shooting up 6 inches a year. But playing hockey, I was always the smallest kid on the ice. Even looking back at some class pictures from elementary school, I was the smallest kid in the class, boy or girl. So playing hockey as the little guy was challenging at times. And I loved to play the game, but there were other things I like to do as well, like watch Emergency on Saturday morning and some other TV shows. So I played hockey up until high school, and then I quit. And it was in grade 12 or 13 when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life that started thinking about doing some production work. So, for high school assemblies and high school plays and graduations, I go down in this bunker at Lakeshore Catholic High School, and and help with the production side of things, lighting and audio and that sort of thing. And then in grade 13, when I had to do a co-op placement, I had to choose, and this is really kind of a turning point for me. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, it was my guidance counselor, Miss Barchisi, told me I could go to Channel 2, NBC in Buffalo, or I could go to Rogers Community 10 in Welland. Obviously, NBC is a little bit more appealing than Rogers. At the time, it certainly was. But she said, listen, if you go to Channel 2, you're going to be sweeping floors and you're going to get people coffee and you're going to do all this grunt work. And when your co-op placement is over, it's over. She said, if you go to the community TV station, basically you're going to have an opportunity to really to dig in and learn about the business and to do this work behind the scenes and be a part of productions that are going to be on television. So I decided to go that route thanks to her advice. And obviously, if I had gone the other direction, I probably wouldn't have found this great career. So it was in grade 13 really when I did that co-op placement, and then once that was over, I continued to volunteer and get as much experience as I could, doing a lot of the things that you've probably done, covering Guelph Storm games and working in community television there. And then, as I said earlier, one night the host didn't show up. I raised my hand and volunteered to do it. I was 18, probably 6'1", 165, had a mullet and an earring. And funny story, I still got the hole in my ear, other ear, this one. I took that earring out before I went on TV for the first time. And I never put it back in. The hole never closed up. But I took it out before I went on TV the first time and trying to be as professional as I could. And I was awful. I mean, I was really, really awful. But they obviously saw something in me and allowed me to continue to do it. And then every year, the play-by-play guy, Reg Redshaw, would go away for 1 month to Florida. So then they let me start to do some play-by-play, filling in for him when he went in. So I would run up and down from the broadcast booth to the corner to host and then do play-by-play. And everybody said, listen, you're good as a host, but you're better as a play-by-play announcer. So that's when I was like, okay, I think I'm going to focus on doing this. And really how I created a job for myself, because as you know, getting a job in the industry is really difficult. So I had to create one for myself. So I went to some local radio stations in Niagara Falls and St. Catharines and actually bought airtime. And I negotiated a deal with the Golden Horseshoe Junior B Hockey League that I had the rights to broadcast their games on the radio. So then I worked with all 7 teams in the league, come up with a schedule, and put kind of a skeleton broadcast together with not the greatest equipment or the greatest talent, but that's how I gained experience calling games on the radio. And then when I was 24, I got the job with the Hamilton Bulldogs. And I was the youngest guy in the league, and I think probably the greenest guy in the league. So, and I needed those people with Rogers Community 10, which became Cogeco Community 10. I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's TV Niagara or something like that now. I needed those people to give me a chance and to work with me and help me get better, and they did. I'm very grateful for that. Again, all the players that I worked with, coaches, managers, owners over the years, they were very patient with me and helped me get better. And then when I got to Hamilton, it was kind of the same process. And getting advice is a little harder when you get to pro hockey, but I got a lot of great feedback. My color commentator, you'll probably know the name Al Craig, broadcasting legend in Hamilton. And I was so lucky that I got to work with him for 13 years because not only was he a great broadcast partner, but he's still a great friend. And he was a real mentor for me and really helped me figure out what to do on the ice, or not on the ice, but in the booth, calling games on the ice and also out of the booth, just how to be a professional. So very grateful for all the people over the years who gave me a chance and then stuck with me. And that's thanks to them, I am where I am today and doing what I love for a living.
Did you have any other mentors besides Al Craig that helped you when you first started out?
I mean, Reg Redshaw and Roger Bouchard, they were the play-by-play and color team on community television. And I would say they were mentors. Some of the producers back then were Mark Bennett and Corey Stewart and Erica Benedicti. They were all great with me and they all helped me learn. But, everybody really chipped in. And even my friends would watch my demo tapes and they would give me feedback. My friends' parents would do it as well. Funny story. One of my best friends growing up, his name is Brent Rossi. He's now the president of the Bridgeport Islanders. They just changed their name in the American Hockey League. Was with Pagula Sports and Entertainment, working with Buffalo Sabres and Buffalo Bills for years. But him and we grew up together, spent a ton of time together. And I remember his dad, Rich Rossi, would watch my demo tapes and give me honest feedback, and just getting as much of that feedback as I could from family and friends and coworkers and anybody I could get to in the industry was extremely valuable in helping me improve and get to where I am today.
That's really good advice, and I'm going to try to do that myself with friends and family and coworkers when I put these podcasts on together. One thing I was going to say, everybody who's come on here, all my guests have pretty well said the same thing about volunteering and internships as well. So maybe I'll have to look at getting an internship with a local radio station as well as hopefully I'll be back with Rogers TV doing the Storm games with the camera work. Because with Rogers TV, you're right, they give you a lot of opportunities to learn and to improve your skill set as well.
100%. And for me, it's all about practical experience, Chris. I mean, I did go to Niagara College for a couple of years, and I think that broadcasting program was really good if you knew you wanted to be in broadcasting, just weren't sure really in what capacity, or you wanted to kind of learn all the tricks of the trade. But I kind of put the cart before the horse. So I started doing this work with community television and realized that's what I wanted to do as a career. But I was already doing on-air work, and that's really where I wanted to focus my time. So I went to college after I started doing that because everybody said, well, you need a college diploma. And I just found that it kind of, my studies kind of took away from what I was trying to do as far as practical experience was concerned. So I ended up leaving that program. And again, that's not a knock in any way, shape, or form on that program, that broadcasting program at Niagara College. But again, because I started in the industry and knew exactly what I wanted to do, I wanted to be a host or I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer, I needed to focus on that. So I left, and I just spent as much time as I could getting practical experience, mainly with the community television station. And I did not just sports, I focused on sports, but I would co-host the morning show when they needed someone to fill in. And I worked on a news magazine program and covering dog shows. And they had this wine event I remember was called Cuvée. And I'd never tried wine before, but I really liked ice wine. So I remember covering that event. But I just got as much experience in as many different areas as I could. And it's that practical experience that I think really helped me improve. So if you're looking for a little bit of advice, that's what I would say is just get as much practical experience as you can. And even doing this is practical experience. So good for you for doing this.
Thank you. And I even got some advice from Jim Van Horn, the longtime color commentator for the London Knights. And he teaches at Fanshawe College. And he said, I could go to this broadcasting program if I like, but he goes, what you're doing right now is just as good. And he said, what you need to do is keep practicing reps and also build your contacts, which I have been. And with this social media platform too, I'm hoping somebody one day will give me an opportunity. And with Rogers TV, I will be able to get back to doing the cameras, and hopefully I'll get some play-by-play training with them as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on hockey. I mean, you could do what I did and just try to get whatever experience is out there, and maybe it's calling hockey games. Maybe it's I did I think high school badminton tournaments. I know I did Brock University basketball games. I did Roma soccer games. So whatever I could do, I did, and it didn't necessarily help me get better as a hockey broadcaster. It just helped me get better as a broadcaster. So yeah, that practical experience, whatever you can get, I would suggest taking it. I mean, you do get to a point in life, and I think this really did probably take a lot of talented people out of the industry because it is so hard to get your foot in the door and to get that first job. But I know I worked with a lot of very talented people who ended up going down a different path for their career because they simply couldn't put the time in that I was able to put in. And that's really where I have to thank my dad and my grandma and my family and my friends for supporting me, not only supporting me emotionally, but also supporting me financially when I was, in my late teens and early 20s and making next to no money and chasing this career, which at the time, felt like I was chasing a unicorn. But thankfully it all worked out. And again, I have so many people to thank. And certainly my dad would be at the top of that list. I wouldn't be here without him. There's no doubt about it.
And right now I am still working at my other job full time. And with my schedule, I can still do my podcast 2, 3, 4 times a week. And like I said, I've learned how to produce my own shows. I've learned how to get guests, how to connect with guests. And I also have to realize too, sometimes you have to be very flexible with your guest schedule. Sometimes I have to sacrifice some sleep and to get somebody a guest on. But you know what? It's part of the sacrifice, because even Dan Shulman told me sometimes you have to make sacrifices, even in doing something with a podcast too.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of sacrifices over the years. I wouldn't blame my career for the end of my marriage, but it certainly played a role in it. I mean, it's tough. You miss a lot of holidays when you're traveling with a professional hockey team. Really, you're tied to their schedule. And I've been in pro hockey now. It'll be my 21st year in 2021, 2022, and I've never missed a game. And I take a lot of pride in that. But over the years, there were games where I was really sick. I remember in Hamilton, because I was traveling with the team, and most of our travel was on a bus, the old Iron Lung. If one guy was sick, that tended to spread pretty quickly through the team. So there were a lot of times with the Bulldogs where I was worn out, because I wasn't just doing play-by-play. At the end, I think you mentioned my title off the top. I was the Senior Director of Broadcasting, Communications, and Team Services / play-by-play announcer. So there were a lot of hours being put in, and broadcasting in a lot of ways was second or third as far as order of importance, because as a team services guy, I had to get the team from point A to point B to have a game to broadcast. So there were a lot of early mornings and late nights. And even now that I'm in the NHL, and I'm not complaining at all, because they treat us extremely well. But, prior to last season, I was always traveling with the team, and hopefully I will be again in this upcoming season. But you go to San Jose, you play a game that starts at 7:30 Pacific time. And by the time that game is over and you get to the airport and you fly back to Calgary, sometimes you're getting home at 3 or 4 in the morning and got to be up at 9 o'clock to do a radio hit. So, even at this level, the highest level, there are still a lot of those half sleepless nights, Chris. So you're not alone. And it does take some sacrifice for most of us to get into broadcasting in whatever way, shape, or form we do. So glad to hear that you're willing to take some of those lumps, just like most of us did.
Yeah, and I do have a passion for this, and this is something I want to do. And I know it's not going to be easy, Derek, but I just got to keep plugging away, working hard at it, and just keep trying to improve and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the key. And you mentioned a word there that I think is extremely important, Chris, and that's passion. Because I will tell anybody, just find something you're passionate about in life and go after it if you can. However you can. And that's exactly what I did. I developed a passion for broadcasting, and then taking it a step further, a passion for calling hockey games, for doing play-by-play. And I just chased that dream, and it wasn't always easy. And, moving my family across the country, and my family was my wife and my dog at the time, that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy on me, and it certainly wasn't easy on her. And unfortunately, that marriage came to an end, and I think that move in my career played a part in that. And it's a sacrifice that thankfully not all broadcasters have to make, but I know that a lot of broadcasters have had to make those types of sacrifices. And it kind of is what it is. And when you find something that you're as passionate about as I am about calling hockey games, you have to decide what's truly important in life. And in hindsight, there are probably some decisions I've made along the way that if I could go back and do it differently, I would. But hey, we only live this life once, and there's no delete button. So we get one shot at it, and we're going to make some mistakes along the way, but live and learn, right?
Definitely. And I found my passion when I was just about almost 48. So I'm starting a little bit later, but you know what? It's never too late to find a passion.
That's right. Yeah. And if you're passionate about it, then I really think that gives you a fighting chance, because again, it's something I alluded to earlier. Worked with a lot of talented people in this business. Even when I was doing just stuff on the community television station, and certainly even guys in the American Hockey League, second best league in the world. But the truth is, those aren't high-paying jobs. We're not talking about six-figure salaries for an AHL broadcaster. My salary, my first year, this will blow your mind. It still blows my mind. I got paid $4,500 my first year with the Hamilton Bulldogs. That was a full-time job. I did.
Wow.
I think it was an 82 game schedule at the time, plus preseason games, plus playoff games. And the only thing that saved me was they allowed me to do a deal with the Ramada Hotel in Hamilton. So I got to stay at the Ramada for free, but there were nights where I couldn't afford to eat. I'd have to buy a pizza for $6 and somehow stretch it out for 2 or 3 days. $4,500, and I got a big raise my second year. I got a $20,500 raise, so I made $25,000 my second year with the Hamilton Bulldogs. It felt like I was rich, but these are some of the sacrifices that you have to make to get your foot in the door. Now, truth be told, if they wanted to hire someone who was better than me, they were going to have to pay them more than me that first year in Hamilton. So for me, it was okay. This is my chance to get my foot in the door, and it sucked for a year. It sucked in the sense that, I couldn't afford to eat some days. But as a 24, 25-year-old who just wanted to call hockey games for a living, it didn't suck because that's what I was doing. I was chasing my passion, and I was getting to do what I loved, and someone was paying me to do it. Even though it was $4,500, someone was still paying me to call AHL games. So I got a lot better that first year, despite what you heard in those goal calls you played earlier. I did get better, and then continued getting better. And after 13 years in that league, got to this league, and now I'm a little bit more comfortable. So all of the sacrifices that you're making, I hope will pay off like they have for me.
Yeah, because Dan Shulman was telling me that too, that passion's important, but also some people want to go in for the money and the fame, and it takes many years and a lot of a little bit of luck too, and it's not going to be easy roles. So what you just told me there too, I'm prepared for as well.
Yeah, there's no guarantees in this business. Even for people who have been in it for decades, the business is changing right now, big time, and part of it is what we're doing right now, podcasts, and it isn't just kind of radio, TV, newspaper, which is what it used to be not that long ago, really. I mean, you think about 10 to 15 years ago, yeah, there was the internet, but there wasn't social media. And the fact that you have a platform like this to work on your craft, I think it's really exciting. I mean, I think how I first started working on being a broadcaster before I even knew that I wanted to be a broadcaster was, remember those ghetto blasters?
Yes.
They had the 2 tape decks.
Yeah.
Well, what I learned was that if you plugged a set of headphones into the microphone jack, the one headphone was actually a microphone. So I would do these mixtapes for when my friends and I went out. And I would be DJ Derek or whatever I called myself, and come up with a bunch of cheesy intros for songs. Something like, well, if you're hungry, it's time for some meatloaf. And just try to make my friends laugh sort of thing. But I think that was probably my first broadcasting experiences when I used to make those mixtapes using a set of headphones as a microphone and plugging them into my old 2 tape deck ghetto blasters. So yeah, the fact that you can do something like this and have professional broadcasters on to chat with, pretty exciting. I wish I had those tools when I was trying to get into the industry.
I wish they had this 25 years ago, because when I was in my 20s, I was trying to figure out lawn security or broadcasting. And at the time, I didn't have the computer or internet. And I really wish, well, it's never too late, but I wish they had this back then, because I think I would have gone right into broadcasting, because I always have had a passion for it, but I've never really had the opportunity to do what I'm doing until like the last year or two or whatever.
Yeah, and again, the industry is changing so much right now, and it's closing some doors, I think, for the traditional ways of broadcasting, but it's also opening doors as a result. Whether it be podcasts or social media, there are way more platforms now than there used to be. Unfortunately, fewer jobs maybe on the traditional mediums than there used to be, but more opportunities elsewhere. So exciting stuff for young broadcasters, and just a great way to kind of get your feet wet and, as you said, build contacts and get experience.
Definitely. Just going to ask you a couple more questions. Are you still okay for time?
Yep, all good.
Okay, thanks. Next question I was going to ask you, what was your most memorable call in your time with Hamilton, and what do you remember most about? I guess you've already answered the second part of that question, but what was your most memorable call in your time with Hamilton, your favorite call in your 13 years with the Bulldogs?
Well, I can talk about the 2007 Calder Cup playoffs all day. I mean, just so many great memories, just everything. Whether it be just being on the road with the guys and kind of seeing them come together as a team, how Carey Price emerged as, I think he was the first goaltender since Patrick Waugh to go right from junior to the AHL and win a Calder Cup as a rookie. And now I'm hoping he wins a Stanley Cup a lot later on in his career. But that whole 2006-2007 season was special because it was a group that wasn't the most talented, but they came together at the right time. And obviously they got the goaltending, and you can't get to a Stanley Cup final or a Calder Cup final unless you got that goaltending. So, when I think about that run, it really started with 3 games to go in the regular season when Bob Gainey made that decision to send Yaroslav Halak to the World Championships and to send Carey Price to the Hamilton Bulldogs to get some professional experience. And, we knew about Carey Price. He was the 5th overall pick. He led Canada to a gold medal at the World Junior Championships that year, but still, he's a 19-year-old rookie. You're expecting this guy to take you to the promised land? We certainly didn't. But then he played in 3 regular season games. He went 2-1, and he looked very good. Not great, but very good. You're thinking, okay, pretty good start for this 19-year-old kid. And it's not easy to play in the AHL as a teenager, and very few guys do it. So then you get to the Calder Cup playoffs. First series against the Rochester Americans. Bulldogs won that in 6. Second series was against the Manitoba Moose. Bulldogs won that in 6. In the conference finals, they played a really talented Chicago Wolves team. And I love Chicago. It's still probably my favorite road city. So getting to go to Chicago in the spring was a lot of fun. A lot of the guys went to a Cubs game at Wrigley Field. I passed on that opportunity. I don't know why. It's certainly one of my regrets when I think back at that run now. But they beat the Wolves in 5. And then it was off to the final against the Hershey Bears. Hershey won the championship the year before. They were huge favorites going into the Calder Cup final. I remember back in the day when there was actually bulletin board material. I'm sure some coaches and teams still use actual bulletin board material where they put stuff up on the bulletin board. But back in 2007, teams actually had bulletin board material where we had a bulletin board in the Bulldogs dressing room where if we saw something we thought could motivate the guys, one of my jobs was to cut it out of the newspaper and put it up on the bulletin board. So before game 1 of the final, up on that bulletin board, and it wasn't me that did it, but whoever did deserves some credit. Well, the Hershey Bears had a parade route published prior to game 1 of the Calder Cup finals.
Wow.
Here's the parade route for this year's championship. Well, they were a little quick pulling that trigger. So the Bulldogs won game 1 4-0. Before game 1, there was a big storm in Hershey. Delayed the game by about an hour. Torrential downpour, thunder, lightning, one of the worst thunderstorms I've ever seen. So the officials, because of the storm, some roads got flooded. They were an hour late getting to the game. So this, for me, is one of the defining moments of Carey Price's career. So think about it for a sec. He's a 19-year-old. He's a teenager playing in a league with men. 3 regular season games of experience. Doing the math, 17 games of postseason experience in the AHL at this point in his career. So you would think that Carey Price would be nervous going into game 1 of the Calder Cup final, right? No. What did he do to pass the time during that 1-hour delay? He slept on the floor of the dressing room. He went to sleep. I mean, I was nervous. As a veteran broadcaster in the AHL at this time, this is the Calder Cup finals, right? And this guy's sleeping on the floor in the dressing room and then shuts out the Bears 4-0 in game 1. Bulldogs lost game 2 and then went back home. It was a 2-3-2 series because of the travel. Won game 3, won game 4. They won those 2 games going away. And this is to answer your question. This is a really long answer. I apologize, but love talking about 2007. So game 5, because the Bulldogs could win it, but there wasn't going to be a guaranteed winner. I think that's why I think there was 12,205 fans at game 5. We were hoping for 17,428 again, but 12,000 strong at I think it was still Copps Coliseum at the time. Yeah, it was, because I used that in my call. So my favorite call, probably to this day, there are some Calgary Flames calls that I really love. I don't know if you're going to ask me about that later. I won't steal your thunder in case you do, but my favorite 2 calls with the Hamilton Bulldogs both came in that game, game 5. So the one thing you can't plan for as a broadcaster is how you're going to call a game-winning goal. you don't know how it's going to happen. I got lucky with this one. It was 1-1 in the third period. And the feeling was if the Bears won game 5 and got the series back to Hershey for game 6 and 7, that they were going to find a way to repeat as champions. So there was this pressure on the Bulldogs to win the series at home in game 5. So it's 1-1 about halfway through the third period, and the Bulldogs are shorthanded. Maxime Lapierre blocks a shot in front of his net, which leads to a 2-on-1 with the unofficial captain of that team, A.J. Baines. The Bulldogs didn't actually have a captain that year. You could argue that he was, or maybe Kyle Chipchura was, one of those two guys. But for me, it was A.J. Baines, a veteran AHL guy. Didn't get a cup of coffee in the NHL, but was just one of those kind of veteran guys you had to have on your team if you were going to have success in the AHL. So 2-on-1 Lapierre and Baines. Lapierre makes a perfect pass to Baines, and I still don't know how he put the puck in the net. He basically went helicoptering, and the puck went in by Frederick Kasivi. And the place just exploded. And still probably my favorite goal call ever. And I encourage you to listen to it. I'm really proud of it. So I didn't know how that was going to happen, but a long 2-on-1 for a hockey play-by-play announcer is pretty easy to call because you've got time to set it up. And then it was just feeding off the energy of the 12,000 plus fans, which I did. So then fast forward to the end of the game. This is something I did plan for. So in the weeks leading up to game 5, when I thought the Bulldogs might give me an opportunity to call a championship, I started laying awake at night thinking, okay, what am I going to say if they win it all? So I would lay in bed and I'd go through all these different scenarios of how the game ended and how I was going to describe it. So I'm, again, very proud of my end of game, end of season call because I just shut up for 10 seconds. So I kind of set the tone, set the scene, and I said, 10 seconds left. Let's listen to the crowd at Copps Coliseum. And then I just cranked up our crowd mics and shut up, which is the hardest thing for a broadcaster to do. We all want to talk. So shutting up for 10 seconds and letting the fans take over. Maybe Steve was one of those fans.
Yeah.
So I cranked up the crowd mics and they were screaming, yelling. I've never heard the building so loud. Maybe when Gretzky set up Lemieux in 87, it was louder, but it was incredible. And then some fireworks went off. And then I think I said, hopefully I get this right, game over, series over, season over. And there was a lot of emotion in my voice. I actually get emotional just saying it right now. And for the first time in franchise history, the Hamilton Bulldogs have won the Calder Cup. They beat the Hershey Bears 2-1 in game 5, and they win this best of 7 series 4-1. Start celebrating Steeltown. Your Dogs are the AHL's best in 2007. I'm pretty sure that's what I said. I've listened to that call a lot. And I get emotional even just saying those words now because it brings back just the emotion of the moment. We had a great broadcast location at Copps Coliseum. Maybe the best in hockey.
It's high up, though. It's high
not,
up.
I'm telling you, it's not high up. No. You compare it to where we call games from in the NHL, there are a handful of arenas that are similar, including Scotiabank Saddledome, but we actually don't have a booth at the Dome, believe it or not. It's kind of just a catwalk, and we're set up there. Great vantage point, but I think about Rogers Place in Edmonton. You feel like you're in Red Deer calling games. You're so far from the ice, and that's the way it is in most new NHL buildings. Now, as a Red Wings fan, I'll tell you this. My favorite NHL building is Little Caesars Arena because they modeled it after Bell Center in Montreal, and Detroit has come a long way in the last 10 years. It used to be pretty rough in that area of the city, like downtown.
Now, definitely, yes.
Yeah, now they've got the football stadium, the baseball stadium, the hockey arena.
Basketball.
They've really cleaned up that whole area, and it's quite nice now. But Little Caesars Arena, it's a lot like Bell Center. It's very steep. Most U.S. buildings, or certainly ones that have NHL and NBA teams, have very flat seating because that's better for basketball, and that's priority number one in most of those markets. But a great hockey arena is like this, like Bell Center, like Little Caesars Arena, and Copps Coliseum wouldn't be that steep, but fairly steep, but a gondola, so it kind of hangs over the ice. So I'm telling you, it's almost ideal to call a hockey game because you're you're high enough up that it slows everything down and you can see everything. You can see plays develop and process it and turn those thoughts into words, but you're also kind of right over the action. So great broadcast location there. And we used to have this bar. I think it was probably for security so you don't fall out, but I would always lean on it to call games. And when the final few seconds were coming off the clock and I was just listening to the crowd and kind of soaking it in myself, I remember grabbing that bar and like shaking it like the Ultimate Warrior. And so just thinking back to that moment in my career and in Bulldogs franchise history, I still get chills thinking about it. So thanks for asking me that question, because I love talking about that game and that series and that season, as you can hear.
Yeah, because my friend Steve, I don't mean to go on. He's just a huge fan of yours too, and he wanted me to ask you that. So I got one more Bulldogs related question for you, and then just a couple of Calgary questions for you. So this is the last Bulldogs question for you. Top 5 AHL Bulldogs you saw play in your time in Hamilton. Just really brief.
Like as far as best players in the AHL or guys that went on to have careers in the NHL.
I guess careers in the NHL that played with the Hamilton Bulldogs.
Well, Carey Price has to be at the top of the list, right? I mean, arguably the greatest goaltender of his era. And we were so lucky to get him for those 3 regular season and 22 postseason games back in 2006, 2007. And I forget how many games he played to start the next season, but he actually started the next season with us as well before going up to the NHL and never looking back. But Carey Price would have to be number 1. The best skater that I ever saw play in the AHL, at least as far as guys who spent a significant amount of time in the league, PK Subban. I mean, he was such a talented guy. And usually when you're that good, you don't stay in the AHL for a full season. But he had some maturing to do. I think he would tell you the same thing. So Montreal Canadiens started him with the Hamilton Bulldogs, and he did get called up on a couple of occasions, including in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which is really his coming out party in the NHL that year. But in that 2009-2010 season, PK Subban was the best player in the AHL, in my opinion. He was the best prospect I'd ever seen in the league, and he'd probably be number 2 on my list. Max Pacioretty would be up there for sure. Max was an interesting one because Don Lever was the head coach when Max Pacioretty played there. He might have crossed over into Guy Boucher as well. I can't remember, but Don Lever was there when Max first started, and Max's goal was like the goal of everybody else in the AHL to get to the NHL, and he thought that he was going to have to do it as a bottom 6 forward, and Don Lever did not agree. And I remember Don calling him in to his office and saying, Max, you're going to be a top 6 guy, and you're going to be a power play guy here, and you're going to be a top 6 guy, and you're going to be a power play guy in the NHL. So I'm going to play you in the same situations here that you're going to be playing in the NHL when you get there. And Max didn't believe it at first, but then he became a great goal scorer with the Hamilton Bulldogs, and then eventually with the Montreal Canadiens, became captain of the Habs, and now with the Vegas Golden Knights. So he'd be number 3. Number 4 and 5, Tomas Plekanec was a terrific AHL player and turned into a terrific NHL player as well. So I'd have to put him on the list. And I'm going to wrap up with a guy who didn't really get much time in the NHL. I think in this day and age you would, but back then when you had to be big or you had to be really, really good, he just didn't really get a long look, and that's Corey Locke, the Hamilton Bulldogs all-time leader in goals, assists, and points. I think if he played today, he'd spend most of his career in the NHL, but back then he was small, didn't skate all that well, but he was incredibly smart. And I think teams now value that high hockey IQ more than they ever have. So he didn't make it, but I think he should be on my list. One of my favorite guys, certainly in my time in Hamilton, and the Bulldogs leader in just about every offensive category when you look at that franchise.
Because you look at, I don't mean to compare Locke to Suzuki, but even Suzuki, if he played 10, 15 years ago, he might not have gotten an opportunity as well because he's not that big either.
Yeah, I think Suzuki skates better, but
yes.
I also think that Locke could have probably improved his skating as well. And yeah, the game has changed, and I think it's changed for the better because if you're small and skilled, you have a chance to play in the league now. I mean, you used to have to be small and really, really skilled to play in the league. And now if you're small and skilled and you can skate and you've got a high hockey IQ, you're going to play in the league. So it's great to see guys like Caulfield and Cole Caulfield reminds me a little bit of Johnny Gaudreau. Just even the way they move and the way they think and their skill sets. So yeah, he's going to be a fun player to watch for a long time.
Okay, definitely. Now I just want to wrap this up. I just got a couple Calgary questions for you, Derek, and then I'll let you go if you're still okay for a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'm good. My tea time isn't until 1:15, so.
Okay, no problem. Because like I said, I really appreciate you coming on and all the stuff you're telling us is really good behind the scenes that the fans don't get to see. So my next question I was going to ask you, how did you end up getting the Calgary Flames radio job? How did that come about?
Well, it's an interesting story. So I grew up, I think I told you this earlier, as an Edmonton Oilers fan. And we were affiliated with them for, I would say, parts of 3 or 4 seasons when I was in Hamilton. They were the Bulldogs affiliate when I started, and then they were a split affiliate, and then they sent some players to us on a couple of other occasions as well. So I knew some people in that organization. And when Hall of Famer Rod Phillips announced he was retiring, I applied for that job. I got a phone interview, but didn't get it. Probably finished top 5, top 10, somewhere in that realm. So that was disappointing. What was really disappointing for me, though, was when the Montreal Canadiens switched radio stations, going from CJAD to TSN 690. I had called probably 100 Bulldogs games that were simulcast on TSN 690. I had a really good relationship with their program director. Obviously had a really good relationship with the people in Montreal, and was told that the Canadiens decided I was their guy. But the issue was they weren't responsible for hiring the new play-by-play announcer. That was a TSN decision. So really, I think the most disappointing moment of my career had to be when I didn't get that job. I spent the whole summer thinking that it was my job. I'm like, well, the Montreal Canadiens, they told me I'm the guy, so I must be the guy. But, and I can't remember his name, Rob Gray. He was the head of TSN radio in Canada. He wasn't a big fan of mine. So he decided to hire John Bartlett, and it was a great hire. John's gone on to have a terrific career in the NHL and is now doing national games for Sportsnet. He's a really good broadcaster and was a really good hire. But as the voice of the Habs AHL affiliate for a decade, that was the job that I thought I was going to get, and I didn't, and I was super disappointed. And because Michael Andlauer treated me so unbelievably well in Hamilton, listen, I was ready to spend the rest of my career calling Bulldogs games. But then in the summer of 2014, Peter Maher announced that he was going to be retiring. Hall of Famer, unbelievable broadcaster, unbelievable guy, and he's treated me extremely well since I arrived here. And I wasn't going to apply for the job. So my wife, now ex-wife, Jen, had become friends with, you remember Zach Stortini?
That name does sound familiar.
Yeah, former NHL enforcer, played for us in Hamilton, was on that 2007 Calder Cup team. I didn't have friendships. I was friendly, but I didn't have friendships with a lot of players over the years. But he was one of the guys. He came over to my house for dinner on a few occasions. And my wife at the time really got along with his wife, Desiree. So Desiree called my now ex-wife and said, hey, the play-by-play job in Calgary is open. Derek should apply. So Jen came to me and said, hey, the Flames job's open. You should apply. And I'm like, nah. I was so disappointed. It ruined my whole summer when I didn't get the Canadiens job. I said, I'm happy doing Bulldogs games. I'm just gonna stay here. And so she actually talked me into applying. So I'm like, I hesitantly sent in a few audio clips and my resume, and I bet you within an hour I got a response from Kelly Kirsch, the program director at Sportsnet 960 The Fan here in Calgary, saying he wanted to set up a phone interview. So I did 2 or 3 phone interviews. And then they flew me out here. And my first in-person interview was with 2 people from Sportsnet, including Kelly, and a guy by the name of Craig Lutoski, and 4 people from the Calgary Flames. And at the head of the table was the late Ken King, he ran Calgary Sports and Entertainment. And I'll never forget that interview. So I was nervous going in, sweaty palms as I sat in the waiting room and went into the room, and I thought, okay, this is my chance. I'm in-person interview for an NHL job, and Ken King was a very intimidating man, And I remember him doing everything he possibly could to rattle me and to see how I was going to respond. And at the time, I'm like, what is happening right now? Like at one point in time, he got up, bent over with his back to me and started tying up his shoes. I'm like, what is happening? But he knew that whoever took over for Peter Maher, who's still to this day a legend here, they were going to have a rough go for a while. And he wanted to see how they would respond to adversity. And he pushed me. He asked me some really uncomfortable questions, and I was just honest with him, maybe too honest on occasion, including when he asked me who my favorite team was, and I tried to plead the fifth, and then he wouldn't let me, and I had to answer Edmonton Oilers, and one of his vice presidents stood up and said, okay, thanks for coming in. So I thought it was all over at that point in time, and I left that boardroom, and I left Calgary thinking I got no chance to get this job. And a couple of weeks went by, hadn't heard anything, and then I got an email saying they want to bring you back for a second interview. Okay, well, still in the running. Well, the second interview wasn't really an interview. It was a welcome to Calgary. And I'll never forget how much Ken King changed. So in that first interview, he was tough on me and made me feel about this big. He had a suit and a tie on, and he was the man. In the second interview, I use that term loosely, he was in a golf shirt, leaning back in his chair. And I think the first thing that he asked me was, so where are you going to live when you move to Calgary? And I'm like, does this mean I got the job? So anyways, later that day, after I went through my second interview with Ken King, who had to give the stamp of approval, Kelly Kirsch said, let's meet for dinner at the Keg. And he slid an envelope across the table with an offer. So that's how I got my first NHL job, and maybe my last. I'd be more than happy to spend my whole career here.
I was gonna say that's awesome stuff, Derek, and like I said, there's only so many of these jobs in each league, and it's just amazing how sometimes things work out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful to get to do what I do, to do what I love for a living. There are 32 jobs now in the NHL with the Seattle Kraken coming in, and guys, especially on the radio side, it seems once they get a job, they don't give it up. Like Peter Maher, for instance, was here 33, 34 years.
Yep.
And I don't know where my career is going to take me. I'll tell you this. Last summer, I did interview. I was shortlisted and interviewed for the Tampa Bay Lightning television job. That was a pretty exciting opportunity. It's funny how when the process started, there were different candidates than when the process ended because of COVID. So I felt pretty good about my chances when the process started, but then a couple of candidates who weren't available became available because of the COVID break, and Dave Randorf ended up getting that job, and he does an outstanding job calling Lightning games on television. So really happy for him. He's become a good friend of mine over the years, but maybe someday I'll end up calling Flames games on television. Maybe I'll be on the radio for the rest of my career. Maybe I'll end up in another market, but calling Calgary Flames games for the last 7 years has been an absolute thrill. And we've had one pretty good playoff run, hoping for some more longer playoff runs moving forward, and maybe one this season.
Okay. Just two quick questions, and that's it. This one I was just going to ask you briefly. What is it like following in the footsteps of Peter Maher as the voice of the Flames? How were people receptive to you in your rookie year with the Calgary Flames?
Well, it's a great question, and I'll just be honest and say it was tough, and in some ways it's still tough because when I got the job, people asked me about replacing Peter Maher. And I said, you don't replace Peter Maher.
No.
He's irreplaceable. All I could do, and I liked how you worded your questions, actually, because all I could do was try to follow in his footsteps. He set the bar extremely high. He's a Hall of Famer. So all I can do is be myself. I'm not going to try to be Peter Maher. Early in my career, I think I tried to be Rick Jeanneret because he's the guy on the radio who I grew up listening to growing up 40 minutes from Buffalo. Some of those calls you played earlier, I think you probably hear, and this is, I'm giving myself a compliment by saying this, I think you probably hear a little bit of Rick Jeanneret in those calls. He's obviously way better than I was, but just that enthusiasm and the way I said scores, that's because I grew up listening to Rick Jeanneret, and he's been a huge influence on me. But all I could do is come in and be my best self. And I've always put in a lot of work. I spend the whole day prepping for a game. Like we talked about earlier, I spend a lot of time critiquing myself, trying to get feedback. So, all of those things that I did in Hamilton, I've continued to do in Calgary, and in ways to an even greater extent, because I'm allowed to focus just on broadcasting now. I don't have to worry about being the senior director of communications and broadcasting and team services and doing all those other things. I can just focus on broadcasting now. But it's been tough. The first year or two, or maybe even 3, if I had a nickel for every time someone said to me, "You have big shoes to fill," I'd be a millionaire. I really would be. And I knew I had big shoes to fill. I still have big shoes to fill, and I'll never fill Peter Marr's shoes. But hopefully 20 years from now, if I'm still doing what I'm doing, people will look at me in a similar way to how they still look at Peter Marr as the voice of the team. And I wouldn't even call myself the voice of the Flames until I got to my second contract. For me, that's something you have to earn. You don't earn it just by getting the job. You earn it by doing the job to the best of your ability and winning people over. And I know that there are some people I'll never win over, Chris, but I think I've won a lot of people over just with the work that I've put in, with the passion that I've brought to the broadcasts. So it wasn't easy. And in some ways, it's still not easy following in his footsteps, but I'm really lucky because he's been a great mentor since I came to Calgary as well. He has always been very welcoming. We try to play a couple of rounds of golf every summer. We try to get together every couple of months during the winter to talk hockey and to talk broadcasting. So Peter Marr has been great, and kind of his endorsement has made things a little bit easier for sure.
I was going to say, and one of the guys I had on my show 6 months ago, Bob Sochi, he's a young guy my age or our age. He took over from the late, great Gil Santos, who did the Patriots games for 36 years. And when I said, what's it like to replace him? Bob Sochi kind of corrected me and just said, it's not replacing him. I'm trying to follow in his footsteps. Yeah. So that advice Bob gave me 6 months ago, I kind of now use when I ask people play-by-play guys who have taken over from legends, what it's like to use the footsteps instead of saying replace. And your answers are very similar to Bob, and he's a really nice guy too.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. But it's so true, right? It's all about respect. You have to respect the people that came before you. And for me, growing up on the radio, as I mentioned, Rick Jeanneret was the guy who I listened to the most. I listened to Joe Bowen a lot as well. On television, of course, Bob Cole and Chris Cuthbert, who I'm lucky enough to work with Sportsnet now, and he's an unbelievable guy as well. But these are the people who basically paved the way for me and people like me that do what we do. So I think it's really important to show those people the respect they deserve, and I'll do that however I can with Peter Marr for sure.
Yeah. And last question, and that's it, Derek. Any advice, not just for me, but anyone that's watching this later on, looking to pursue a career in radio, television, or as a play-by-play guy?
I'll just be blunt. Unless you're super passionate about it, don't bother. For a couple of different reasons. Number one, it's hard to get into this industry. I mean, to get into this industry at a high level, at least. I mean, because of podcasts and things like that, social media, you can get into this industry kind of on the fringes, on the edges, and that's easy enough to do. And I think it's a great way to get your feet wet. But to get to a major professional league and to become the voice of a team, it's not easy. And you said it earlier, you have to do the work, but you also have to get lucky. Timing has to work out. And for me, timing worked out, whether it be, the host not showing up for that Junior B game one night. I often wonder what I would be doing if that hadn't happened. So that's luck, right? That he couldn't make it and they let me fill in, and that was the start of it all. I got lucky getting the Bulldogs job at 24. I didn't deserve the job. There were guys out there better than me. I got lucky because of where I lived and the connections I had made. I got lucky to get that job. And in a lot of ways, I got lucky to get the Flames job. Now, I put a lot of work in, don't get me wrong. 13 years in the American Hockey League, 5 years doing lots of other stuff before that. So I definitely put in the work to get to the NHL. But you still have to get lucky as far as timing, as far as through the eyes of the person hiring. It's very subjective, broadcasting. So thankfully, Kelly Kirsch saw in me what he was looking for. If it had been someone else, they might not have. Just like the guy who was hiring for the Canadiens job, his ears didn't like the way I called the game. Thankfully, Kelly Kirsch's did. And he's helped me improve a lot over the years as well. So my advice is, if you're passionate about it, go for it. Get as much practical experience as you can. Now, if you're coming out of high school, or even if you're in your late teens, early 20s, I do recommend going to broadcasting school, and there's some great ones out there. Ryerson is probably the top school in Canada. Syracuse, probably the top school in the United States. But I know that there's an actual broadcasting school, a sports media college in Toronto that would be, I think, outstanding if you wanted to get into the industry and not only gain that practical experience and get an education, but also build some great contacts. So if you're in the right age group, and even if you're later in life, but you can do it, get an education, but practical experience. And if you can kind of tie the two together and get an education and get practical experience, which is kind of what I did, that's the best way to go. Do as much as you can, even if it's outside of your comfort zone, even if it's something you're not all that interested in. For me, co-hosting the morning show wasn't something I wanted to do moving forward, but more broadcasting experience. So just do as much as you can. Always be professional. I always wore a suit and tie covering Junior B games. People wondered why, but I always wore a suit and tie. It's about building that image, making sure that people look at you as a professional. I think with that comes respect, and then you got to put in the work, and you got to be willing to pay your dues. And if you can do all of that, if you have some talent, and if you get a little lucky, then it can be a great career. It really can be.
Okay, well, thank you, Derek, for the great advice, and I really appreciate. I'm sorry I kept you over 40 minutes, but
Oh, it's okay.
Okay.
Enjoy the chat.
Well, like you said, everybody that comes on here, I'm changing the name of my podcast just to Live with CDP, because most of my interviews, I guess, in a way, go 45 minutes to an hour. And I guess in a way that's good too, because I'm trying to build a rapport with my guests too. And sometimes it takes a few minutes for the guest to kind of know where I'm coming from. And then just, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And you were very easy to talk to, asked some great questions, and I think that's why the conversation went on as long as it did, because it was just a conversation. It wasn't necessarily an interview. And I guess that's the last piece of advice I would give to an aspiring broadcaster. You want to have conversations with people. If you're interviewing someone, that's very formal. Maybe you've got questions that you have written down or you have in the back of your mind, and that's okay too. It's good to be prepared going into an interview. But if you can turn an interview into a conversation, that's kind of next level. And I think that's what we had today, was a conversation. So job well done.
Thank you. And I've also had to let ad-lib too. I've had some guests where something's come up and they couldn't come on, or there are technical difficulties, and I just have to go on with the show. And I'm still learning about ad-libbing too sometimes.
Yeah, it's all part of the learning process for sure. And I remember before my first game, just to wrap it up here, I'll start at the beginning and I'll take you closer to the end. Before my first game hosting, I wrote out my entire intro. Like this thing, it was 3 pages long, written out. Well, first of all, where am I supposed to put it? So I think I taped it to the camera. It was like, got some Scotch tape out, taped these 3 sheets together, taped it to the bottom of the camera lens. The problem with doing that is that once you get lost, and you're going to get lost, then you're lost and you're up the creek with no paddle. So I learned quickly to have thoughts in my head and to just, kind of let it flow instead of trying to read something. If you're lucky enough to work at a place with a teleprompter, that's one thing, but I don't recommend writing 3 pages for an intro and then trying to read through it. So that was kind of a hard lesson learned very early in my career. And then, later in my career, you look for those special moments. And since we didn't get to it, just thinking about my favorite calls with the Calgary Flames, there are 2 that really stand out. My first year, no one expected the Flames to do anything. Like, they were supposed to be a bottom team in the league, not really expected to even compete for a playoff spot, let alone get into the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I think they got in game number 81, beating the Kings. And then they upset the Vancouver Canucks in the first round of the playoffs. And Matt Stajan, the Flames were up 3-2 in the series. Game 6 was at the Saddledome. They were down 3-0 early, battled back, made it 3-3, fell behind 4-3, tied it up 4-4, and then Matt Stajan late in the third period scored to make it 5-4. And that wound up being the game-winning goal and the series-winning goal to send the Flames to the second round. So that call is certainly a memorable one. And I don't know if you collect cards, Chris.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huge.
I did when I was a kid. I did again when I was a teenager. I wish I had the cards from when I was a kid. The ones from when I was a teenager, they're not worth all that much from the early 1990s. But one of the guys I collected in that era was Jaromir Jagr.
Oh, yes.
So to have an opportunity to call his games in the NHL, like I still can't believe I had a chance to do it. So Jagr signed with the Flames. It was really late in the offseason, like literally the day before the season was going to start. And it was mind-blowing that I was going to have a chance to call his games. I mean, I used to collect his hockey cards when I was a teenager. So there was all this anticipation for this living and playing legend, Jagr, to put that Flaming C on, and he did, and he played fairly well for an older guy, the oldest guy in the league. But that first goal was hard for him to get. So there was this building anticipation in the fan base and in the broadcasters waiting for this first goal. And then he finally scored it. It was, again, a long 2-on-1 with Johnny Gaudreau, and Gaudreau made a perfect pass, and Jagr didn't even look like he was trying, just snapped the pocket of the top corner of the net. And that call probably sounded more like those calls you heard early in our conversation, Chris, where I lost it because the whole Saddle Dome lost it. So getting the call, his first Calgary Flames goal, which wound up being his last National Hockey League goal, I think number 768, was certainly a big highlight of my career, and hoping more of those are to come.
I was gonna say I have his autograph upper deck card too. I have. I wish I could show you all my card collection from the past, but I have so many, and I wish. And I had the Wayne Gretzky rookie card too. But back in the '70s, kids in the '70s weren't smart enough to protect cards.
No. I've had a few of those as well. Now I'm into
So-
football cards. I'm a huge Miami Dolphins fan, lifelong, long-suffering Miami Dolphins fan, and I'm pretty excited about the team right now, especially the quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
And before I let you go, I'll admit this, and I hope it works out for me because I've invested quite a bit of money, but I have 499 of his rookie cards.
Wow.
So I'm hoping Tua becomes an All-Pro and a Super Bowl winner. It'll be a pretty good investment, just like those Carey Price rookie cards I bought back in 2007. They've turned into a pretty good investment too.
Definitely. Anyways, Derek, I'm going to let you go so you can get your golfing in. And I was going to say, maybe again in the future, I might be able to have you come back on in the future and just talk about the Calgary Flames, maybe.
For sure. Why don't you reach out next season once some games are being played and we can talk some NHL.
Definitely. Anyways, have a great day, Derek, golfing. And thank you so much again for coming on my 30 Minutes Live with CDP podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Take care. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast today with Derek. I just want to say thank you so much for Derek for coming on. You guys can also follow Derek on Twitter at fan960wills, and he's also on Instagram as well. And you can check out the Calgary Flames website too. I'll put the website on here, nhl.com/flames. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed my interview and podcast with Derek, and I really appreciate him giving me over an hour of his time to talk about his career with the Bulldogs and now with the Calgary Flames. So anyways, guys, I'm going to call this a show, but before I go, I'm going to put on my next guest right here. And 1 second, I'll just put her picture up here. And that's, so my next podcast, guys, is going to be Saturday, July 3rd, which is tomorrow, at 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific. And my guest is going to be LaMonica Peters, a reporter for CBS 8 in San Diego. So I hope you guys can tune in tomorrow at 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 West Coast time. LaMonica Peters, a reporter from CBS 8 in San Diego, will be on my podcast. And that's going to call my podcast for the day. But again, I appreciate Derek Wills, the voice of the Flames on Sportsnet 960 in Calgary, for coming on. And I hope you guys can all tune in to my next podcast tomorrow afternoon, 2:30 Eastern, with LaMonica Peters from CBS 8 in San Diego. So guys, I'm going to call that a day. And hope you guys enjoy Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals tonight, Tampa Bay and Montreal. Tampa Bay is up 2-0. This is a must game for Montreal. They don't want to fall behind 3-0 to Tampa Bay. So I'm looking forward to the Lightning Habs game at the Bell Center tonight at 8 o'clock. All right, guys, have a good afternoon, good evening, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow afternoon on 30 Minutes Live with CDP Podcast. Take care. Thank you all for watching.